Welcome everybody to the final panel session of what has been a terrific first M4D summit here in beautiful Cape Town. And the theme that we're going to be looking at today is one that I think is really interesting and important in light of recent technological change. And this is all about the internet merging with mobile, what that means, and what the implications are both for mobile operators, for internet players, for governments, and for consumers. We are amidst a shift in technological cycles, broadly characterized by having more computing power in smaller devices. Now, this is a global shift. It isn't specific to emerging markets or developed countries. And while it is sometimes difficult to pinpoint the start of a technological shift, we can fairly reliably, in this case, trace it back to the original launch of the iPhone in January 2007, which has reverberated worldwide in a number of ways. You can see this on this sales chart here, whereas PC sales and smartphone sales largely trended upwards in lockstep for years before 2008. You then hit an inflection point after which smartphones have proceeded upwards inexorably. And the implication for the industry is that whereas 5 or 6 years ago, we were largely competing in silos, mobile operators, infrastructure providers, internet players, whereas now we are competing in ecosystems, joined up, and whereas the business paths of the operators and internet players rarely crossed before, they're now much more intertwined. And with that, so too is the success and health of the mobile industry. As I said, a lot of focus as a result of this movement has been on developed countries, but it is starting to shift to the implications for emerging markets. There are prodigal sizes in these markets. And while mobile penetration has grown on a human user basis to around 40 to 45%, there is still significant headroom for growth to the tune of an incremental 130 million new people using a phone each year for the next 5 years. And the interesting part about this is that the stage of the life cycle that many emerging markets are at means that they're essentially living in the future before they should be. A confluence of trends have come early. And what this means in a data world is that the core opportunity in mobile for development, in other words, using mobile as an enabler to service access that people would lack in the absence of traditional modes of infrastructure to service this, that we have a coalescence of trends all coming into one, which means that the value proposition needs to be redefined. One of the most important areas within this discussion is on data, mobile data. And what you can see across several emerging markets, well, many emerging markets, is a move to democratize, to expand the reach, to empower. And this has far-reaching implications because we're starting to see a blurring between smartphones and feature phones, both on price, but more importantly, functionality. It is simply not the case to say that a smartphone user is the only one who can access the internet. We know and have many concrete examples of this happening on feature phones, and many of these customers are doing so on less advanced networks, often 2G, while capacity still permits this. So this focus has not gone unnoticed, both by the mobile operators and the internet players. And it brings up an important point that they need to understand how to position themselves to a digitalized consumer, often at the mid and low income level. So we're starting to see new innovative ways of connecting low income customers to the internet. Facebook, Google, Wikipedia, and others are using zero rating as one example to give customers their first experience of the internet, often on feature phones. We see it in low-intensity browsers and platforms. Opera Mini, Mixit, which we'll hear about today. All of these are designed to cater to a customer who is operating in a fundamentally different economic and cultural environment than that which we've experienced in the West. And it's expanded into mobile for development specifically. We track over 1,500 products and services at the GSMA. And while from a technological point of view, the bedrock remains text-based technologies, USSD, SMS, we have seen a marked increase over the last 2 years in the proportion of services that are actually designed to run on apps or the mobile internet, especially in the health and education sectors. But this also has dual implication. Is it a double-edged sword? If we're connecting low-income customers to the internet, how do we manage the problem of illiteracy, both in language and technology? And who should be responsible for improving that? These are open questions to which there are not answers, but that ultimately we need to solve through partnerships and discussion. So we're in an interesting time, and I think there are many implications and questions more than there are answers, but that's what makes it interesting. Smartphones. What is the incremental value of moving an average feature phone customer to a smartphone, especially if that feature phone customer already uses mobile data? Customer value. How do you define your value proposition in an era where the customer cares more about a seamless user experience and less about the technology that drives that? And finally, monetization and democratization. I don't think anybody in this room or the industry would argue that connecting people to the internet and to services is anything but good. But people rightly claim the need to claim a return on investment. Who facilitates that connection? Who facilitates the vehicle to the journey? And these are questions which do require discussion and debate, and for which I, for one, do not have the answers. But if I did, we wouldn't need to be here. So we have a great panel to help us answer some of these today. So I'd like to introduce them to the stage now. Arnaud Blondet is the Vice President, Techno Center Africa Middle East for Orange. Maria Pinar, the Executive Head of VAS at CELC. Nicola Delia, the Africa Growth Manager for Facebook. And Andrew Rudge, the CEO of Mixit Reach. Please welcome them to the stage. Now, just before we get into panelist presentations, we've all heard about the Souktel questions. We wanted to pose one at this stage of the discussion to really position our debate and discussion today. So I'd invite you to have a look at this question, and the instructions are very simple in terms of how to send in your response, from which we can see the results after the panel in the coffee area. And a lot of this will have to do with partnerships, which is one of the central themes that we are going to be discussing today. So the format where we're going to run, each panelist is going to give a short 5 to 10 minute presentation. I will stop after the second presentation to take questions from the audience, and I may ask a couple myself. We'll then move on to the third and fourth, and then we'll have a full open Q&A, for which I expect there will be many different questions. So to start us off, we'll move to Arnaud Blondet from Orange. Arnaud.
Thank you. So I hope, do you hear me? Yeah? I hope you all know Orange. So as we are not in South Africa, I just start with a small map. Africa and Middle East is clearly a key market for Orange. We have 90 million customers, more than 25 countries, and the development and the increase of usage, revenue, of customers is very important for us in Africa, and it's really a key focus for Orange. One thing regarding this map, we are working in terms of innovation with what we call Techno Center. So I'm in charge of Techno Center activities for Orange in Africa, Middle East. And this Techno Center think, build, and run new services for Africa, Middle East, whatever the subject, from voice, data, CSR services. And we opened Techno Center activities first in Jordan in 2008, and in Abidjan, Ivory Coast in 2010. And these specific activities are really made to think about dedicated service which don't exist in Europe, for example, and which answer African Middle East needs, which I think is one of the subjects. So just a few words on trends that we see in Africa, Middle East. Clearly, the subject is about prepaid market and multi-SIM, and this prepaid market and multi-SIM needs specific subject and specific focus on innovation, on services, and we need really to differentiate thanks to innovation. We also see as a key trend internet mobile, mobile internet through thanks to 3G. We have 3G in now 17 countries in Africa. One day we would go for 4G, but it's not. I think it's not for the point. And the point for mobile for development is clearly coverage first. Coverage, whatever the network. 2G, 3G will be good enough. And the mobile internet is growing thanks to feature phone, WAPable phone, and smartphone. And we see a key trend from last year with low-cost smartphones that we are launching in the market, which enable developing new service, new usage, which happen in the market. A few examples and key directions that we have on new services. First is access on voice calls and improve voice services. This is still very, very important thanks to low literacy in our countries. So the more we develop vocal service, voice call and voice easy service is clearly key for us. Second is about mobile payment. So all about mobile payment is clearly a key enabler for all our customers, and we have a strong growth in mobile payment in the past years, but also months. Then internet. So all about developing data usage, easier data, internet is key. And then last but not least is CSR. We have many subjects about helping customer getting new service, new usage in health, in education, in M-government, and these are quite innovative. And we see that clearly, thanks to mobile, customers will do more and more services. So it really changed the paradigm of the usage. Thanks to this mobile, you do whatever service you used to do on fixed internet in Europe, but it will happen thanks to mobile, whatever the mobile. And the difficulty here is not to focus only on data mobile or smartphone, but to focus on whatever the mobile. Feature phone, low-cost feature phone, so SMS capabilities, USSD capabilities, and this is the key for mobile for development. If we wait for mobile for development to go for apps and smartphone, it will take age, and we open the market as a niche market for the time being. So we really need to go for USSD, SMS, vocal services, very low cost and enable for everybody. So we have some example with agricultural feeds, with drugs drugs takes to ensure that it's the good drugs. But many examples on this kind of subjects that we are looking, launching, and once it works well in 1 or 2 countries, we deploy it in most. A few examples which are quite very different one for the other, but showing emergency credit. We have more than 15 million customers using emergency credit, so it's a sort of consumption credit that Orange gives to our customers every day. And this consumption credit is clearly a key need that we have in our countries, whatever the kind of customer. VIP customer loves credit, and but reward also. A good example, thanks to our partner Nicolas. So a key message in this session is that what we call OTT or whoever is clearly a partner. Our goal is not to do everything by ourselves. We want to help developing internet, help developing usage, and we are very happy of the development of usage of Facebook. Facebook is a key success in Africa. So I will let Nicolas say it, but I say it for him. And clearly we launch in nearly now 15 countries what we call Facebook on USSD. So you have Facebook with no internet. So this is a way to differentiate and to give service. Thanks to Facebook, customers can do whatever they have in mind. And thanks to this, we give it without any internet access. And this is quite successful and useful. Our vision is clearly to go a step forward in this direction, clearly to go from a telco operator to a digital operator. What we call a digital operator is opening the market to whatever partner who wants to work with us, giving APIs, SMS, USSD, and giving the enabler for him to work with us. And thanks to this enabler, he will do himself the right service, the right usage, the right promotion of the service. And we are not here to do always our services, but to open our network to these services. So clearly, integration, best and quality services will be a key differentiator. And this will help clearly to deploy and have services which fit to rural world, and this will make the difference. So we are partnering with most people, and not only in the telco market. What we think is important is that we are ready to open our partnership with energy, with banks, with information, education, media, whoever. We open the market for him, and it's clearly important for us to partner with most of the ecosystem. Second thing, we are opening also our capabilities to help developers, to help entrepreneurs, to help small companies in each country to develop himself. So I imagine that this morning you talked about the venture price, but we really want that companies deploy themselves and create their services by themselves into Orange customers. So we are not building all services by ourselves. We want to go beyond and opening our capabilities through partnership and good win-win partnerships with customers. Last but not least, also we work on specific device, specific services which need focus of an industrial operator to create new usage and differentiate from the market. So we have some examples from Pixie with a small cheap smartphone, but also internet on TV, surf and pay, and internet for all, which are device enabled with dedicated to specific usage to create easier usage of internet. Internet on TV, you have your internet on any TV in the world. Surf and Pay, it's a real solution to do cybercafe. And Internet for All, you give coverage where coverage didn't exist yet. And clearly, it's a way for us to go beyond thanks to internet. So this is my conclusion. We are from a telco operator. We are really shifting the model. We don't want to do everything by ourselves. We really want to open this ecosystem as a digital operator, giving as many possible partnerships as possible. And people in this room are really open to be good partners with us. And one day we will have a co with a SIM. So I won't do it by myself, but I hope somebody will do it, and it will be an Orange SIM.
Thank you, Arnaud. And so I think, Maria, can we turn it over to you for some short remarks, and then we'll get on to Facebook.
Sure, no problem. So part of the things that excited me to talk about mobile for development is intrinsically telco operators have always been communication companies. Now, when you're looking at impacting social transformation, what is social transformation? It's about engaging different people in the right discussions that can enable that transformation to happen. So for me, if we're looking at where we are going with the social web, and I'm always quite intrigued by how we try to position, the evil internet players versus the poor operators. I think we've lost the debate a little bit. The trends have shifted into the social web. Now, Facebook, if you're looking at the trends of where the social web came from, Google did the first main disruptive shift in enabling search to happen and really making and driving open platforms. Facebook came and they did something which just took it one level up. It's called the activity stream, where people are engaged to share and publish and create their ideas, collaborate with others, network with others. I mean, we've now seen social web impacting countries. Now, as operators, we daily deal with our reputation, right? If someone's not happy, they go and put their complaints on the social web, and I tell you, we jump through hoops. I mean, everyone in the room knows that, to try and manage our reputation from that perspective. So for me, it's really to accelerate development and the social transformations we want to do in that. We need to start engaging as different stakeholders in the various areas. So just a brief comment on Cell C. As most people know, we're the third challenger operator in South Africa. We only operate in South Africa. We're in a little bit of a unique marketplace where we have 110% mobile penetration. So we're not in a mobile growth market. However, we do have different groups of areas where we want to focus on. In South Africa, from a regulatory perspective, we need to connect schools as part of our licensing requirements. Now, there again, governments, you have the Department of Basic Education, Department of Communication. These guys say connect the schools. The operators go tick, tick, tick. Let's see how well we just dump technology in the school, and then we've met our obligations, right? The DBE said, no, we want you to do something else. These two regulators do not even talk to one another. So for me, it's an important role as operators and with our social web and internet partners and as community stakeholders on how we can bring the discussion together and start focusing on the interventions that will really start impacting communities. So from that perspective, that's the couple of thoughts I would like to sit around this theme. But for me, it's not about, are we competing with internet companies? Social web is a disruption in itself. Everything is moving into IP. Data prices have to come down. The question is, how do we then monetize and grow in those areas which will enable us to still keep on plowing in billions of dollars into infrastructure to connect people up and be able to also enable new innovation to happen. The social web players have formed platforms for innovation. We don't own innovation anymore as operators.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point and an important call to action. And one of the key themes I've heard coming out of both Arnaud and Maria, your remarks, is that operators are needing to rethink and prioritize innovation, whereas that 10 years ago was not necessary. And this is a testament to what disruption is. Now, we've heard from two mobile operators here. I'm shortly going to invite Nicola and Andrew to speak on behalf of their respective organizations. Before I do, does anybody want to ask any questions, either for Arnaud or Maria, on those first two presentations? Question at the back there.
I want to pick up on the Orange point, which is particularly one of becoming an open IP sort of data-centric operator. And I think it's fabulous and really to be supported. The question is, how do you then protect your market position if you're effectively encouraging over-the-top services?
At the end, customer will use our data. So our market position will be to give more services. And for me, this will be the key value. The value will, it's worse for a customer to change operator because he doesn't see a service. So let's see the worst understandings and the best. The best, yes, we need to find an agreement with OTTs. Yes, there is some value that we are losing. Yes, we take some risk. But I prefer taking some risk, giving the services that customer want or needs. Because sometimes he doesn't know, but need. And this will give value to Orange at the end.
I have a comment on that as well.
Sure.
So I think, again, we're stuck in our 1930s way of thinking, where there's this pot of money called circuit switch revenues, which was quite profitable for us, right? As the telco application is moving into IP, we need to start shifting our thinking of where we're metering and how we're charging for the value of that which we create. So for me, a great example is what happened, again, with the internet players. A good example is Salesforce.com. If you're looking at what happened with Salesforce.com, they focused on one thing they're good at. It's called the CRM application. And what they started doing is they're taking the heavy investment infrastructure away from enterprise customers not to invest heavily, and it was very lucrative businesses for very large players, right? Oracle licenses and Sun Microsystem servers and nice licensing fees for everyone. They went and they disrupted their model and said, we will put this into the cloud. And they shifted the model into a CRM application. Then they went one step further, so they brought the cost of software down for enterprises. Then they said, let's open this up with third parties and innovators who understand the customer's environment that they're working with to start building applications around CRM as an application. Well, we all know the end result of that. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. They completely broke the way how people look at CRM. There's always a debate about open systems, you can't make money on it. Well, there's very lucrative billion-dollar companies who's built their services on it. It's about quality of service and creating service value, not how do we protect our position in the market. For them to enable all these innovators to come up, they were able to compete better than anyone else, and other people are following. And for me, I'm challenging our carriers out there and our operator partners, is that not the thinking that we need to do from learning from this market instead of how do we focus on cannibalization? I think a lot of the time we're drinking our own Kool-Aid too much.
Great. Well, maybe if you could just hold that question, because I do want to bring in Nicola at this point. We've got a lot of discussion here. Nicola, I know you've got some remarks to make on from a Facebook point of view in Africa and for emerging markets more broadly.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. Does it work?
Yeah.
I think it's great to share the stage with some of our partners and start talking about how we are going to connect people in new ways, or as you named the session, in disruptive ways. I also want to thank once more the GSMA. I think the quality of this summit shows the great work that the GSMA Mobile for Development team is doing. In the next 5 minutes, I would like to talk about how together we are going to give power to people to make the world more open and connected. For me, open means having access to information. And during the summit, we heard about access to health information, financial inclusion, agriculture information, and whole mobile and development space. And connected means giving people an easy way to be in contact with people that we care, people that are important for us. We want to create a world where everything is more social, where people can easily access information, where can they easily get in contact with people they care, and access to especially new opportunities. And I think today, with the number of people having access to mobile phones, this is possible. Access to information, the desire to connect with people we care, is the number one reason why people they decide to upgrade their device and start to accessing data. And so I think this is a great opportunity for all the company, all the organization in this room and in the mobile space. I want to go back 1 second to our mission. So by working with our partners, today we connected nearly 1.2 billion people and 124 million in Africa and the Middle East alone. This is just the beginning. We know that it's going to be really a long journey, but this is what I think by working together, we can achieve our mission to connect the next 5 billion people. And if I look at some of our partners in Africa, we found partners that share this vision. So we launched over 100 partnerships in Africa. We launched Facebook Zero with over 40 partners. Facebook Zero is a mobile site that has got all Facebook features, but is optimized for speed. So today, nearly 40% of all mobile subscribers in Africa potentially could access Facebook via Facebook Zero. We partner with mobile operators and device manufacturers to promote Facebook for every phone. Is a Java application that is optimized for data compression. And every month, more than 100 million people access Facebook via this application. And we have helped operators to promote social bundles that will allow customers to be in contact with their friends at an affordable rate. And getting access to data, to information, is just, I think, the foundation to create a knowledge economy. It's an economy where it's no zero sum. I mean, if I know something, it doesn't stop you to know the same thing, but we all benefit from sharing ideas. How we are going to create a knowledge economy is by, again, partnering together. So mobile is going to be the way that the next 5 billion people will access information, and is going to be the way they're going to spend most of their time. So we need to partner with device and chipset manufacturer to create services that are more efficient, that have got better performances, and consume less power. We need to partner with developers to create applications that consume less data. And we need to partner with mobile operators to look at different business models, more creative ones that will make it more affordable for people to access data. And this is basically everything is around internet.org. Internet.org is a pan-industry alliance that we launched in order aiming at connecting the next 5 billion people. It's based on 3 main pillars. First one is making internet more affordable. Second one is to make data more efficient. And the third one is around, again, sustainable business models. We start working with the first wave of our partners, Nokia, Samsung, Qualcomm, MediaTek, Opera, Ericsson, on different initiatives around these pillars. And along this, we've been working with mobile operators, and we will be welcoming partners that have share the same vision. Government, NGOs, academics, experts. This is going to be, again, a long journey. I want to leave you with one thought. I think 1/3 of the population is online today, and the internet penetration is growing at 9% every year. This is relatively slow compared compared to how early we are in this development. Mobile is the answer. We retooled our company last year to, we say, become mobile first. So all our products are designed to be first for mobile and then for all the rest of the platform. It's not just about being mobile first, it's also being mobile less. So designing the best experience for every device. The thought that I want to, actually the question that I want to leave you with is, wouldn't it be great if every user could have easy access to data, could have access to relevant information for them, to new opportunities and people that are important? And wouldn't it be great if we could all start this and make this happen? Again, this is the beginning. We are excited to work with partners in this room and the rest of the industry. Maybe this will make us disruptors, maybe this will make us enablers, whatever. I mean, whatever it takes to connect the 2/3 of the people in the world that are not yet online.
I think a clear commonality coming out of all of the remarks made so far is the importance of partnerships in achieving scale. And there is a clear, internet opportunity here. And I think the other, and this is a nice segue, Andrew, into Mixit's position, is that the other commonality coming out here is that we really need to be focused on a device strategy that is pan device, as opposed to just designing for smartphones or just designing for feature phones, because at the end of the day you simply will be excluding a valuable part of the market here. So Andrew, I know we've talked a lot so far on those themes, and I know from Mixit's point of view this is really ringing true. So perhaps you could give a few remarks as well on these and others.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much to the other panelists providing some great insight. I must admit I haven't dwelled much on Mixit per se, but it occurs to me that a number of people in this room may not have heard of it. Unlike Nicola, Facebook, everyone's familiar with Facebook, but Mixit is very much a South African product, although it's accessible in over 120 countries. We're primarily a South African audience. So what is Mixit? It started off as an IM platform in 2005. Coincidentally, I took this photo in Bangkok in 2005. Coincidence. But it developed at the time when SMS was pretty costly in South Africa, and they developed a way to use a feature phone with basic internet access, so a WAP-enabled phone, able to literally hold a conversation. Developed by a group of engineers, and they just wanted to use it to play games. And that was the idea, was to have a conversation while they were playing a game. But it quickly off, and that was because of a few things. One is the cost of SMSing, and then also the rapid adoption of mobile phones, especially lower-end phones. So I guess Mixit's advantages is the fact that it began in mobile. Rather than starting in the web and moving down, it began in mobile. So it's always been about providing a service that is optimized for mobile, especially in a data-light kind of way. So just thinking about the kind of things that Mixit does, initially it was an IM instant messaging platform. Then it began to see the ability or the power of developing apps that could work on the Mixit platform. Initially, this was done in a closed fashion. So Mixit made the mistake of trying to develop everything themselves. And they realized that the real way to go is to open up the platform and enable other people to develop something. So today, you could develop something. You could, for example, if you're an educational content provider, you could plug into the Mixit API, and through that, you reach over 8,000 different devices. Feature phones, smartphones, tablets, PC, much the same way Facebook is going. But one of the interesting things about Mixit is that it's gone on the path of allowing people to be anonymous. Okay, with that comes some of the bad stuff that one gets on the internet in terms of anonymity. But some of the power that comes out of that in terms of the counseling is really amazing. So as an example, we work with Love Life, which is a local HIV NGO. And their traditional environment is to have a call center. So they've got a person sitting behind a phone answering questions on HIV. The problem with HIV is that it's a very socially sensitive, it's a socially taboo subject. So you don't necessarily want to disclose the fact that you have HIV. So picking up the phone and speaking to someone in a call center is not necessarily a practical solution, especially if you're living in an informal settlement. So what we've enabled is for people to have a conversation via text. So they can sit there with their phone like this, have the conversation with a counselor. And what the counselors are finding is that it's a far more discreet way of getting help. And it's a far more open and honest interaction methodology, because the users just open up automatically. When you're speaking on the phone, first of all, it feels a little bit more personal. So you're a little bit wary of opening up. And also, you've got to be aware of the people around you. And since then, we've expanded into offering Childline provides child abuse counseling. We've got Rape Crisis providing rape counseling. Angel provides substance abuse counseling. So we very much see ourselves as being the enabler. So I guess in the whole service, you've got the counselors sitting here. You've got the networks providing the data access, and Mixit is providing the little interface. So you're linking an end user, no matter where they are, with the counselor in an efficient manner. So one of the, let me just come back to this photo that I took in 2005, and I don't know if anyone picks up the interesting part of this. If anyone's familiar with the Buddhist culture and the monks, first of all, you're not supposed to take a photo of a monk, so I had to try and do it in a discreet way. But what occurred to me when I took this photo was, here you have this guy sitting on his phone. Now, in theory, when you become a monk, you're supposed to give up all your worldly possessions. So that's why they all wear the same robes. They carry around a little bag, and that's where they get their daily food donations. But something interesting is happening there, in that you've got someone who is basically flying against the face of his religion by speaking on a phone. And there are two kind of scenarios here. Either the phone is so valuable that he's not willing to give it up, or it's become so commonplace, it's become utility that you're allowed to have it. I never actually explored the sort of religious rules to see whether, but what I did notice was that more and more monks had phones when I was traveling around there. And that got me really interested in the mobile phone space. Coming from a banking background, I decided to go back to university and study applied economics, looking at behavioral change theory. And what was immediately apparent was the most cost-effective way to get large-scale change going was to use a mobile phone platform. So we've since moved to the point where, this is stats from last year, so that no doubt they've moved significantly, but Africa is really growing rapidly, and the number of connections is phenomenal. Was it Maria who mentioned that we've got over 110% penetration in South Africa? I had a quick look at some recent data. I'm not sure if anyone's seen this report from Ofcom. It's a slightly busy slide. I don't know if I can kind of... if you look at the... and it's cut off on yours. Apologies for that. So each of those colors there represents a year. The blue is 2007, and the purple is 2013. And what they've done is they've looked at the different usage of phones over those years and the trends. And this is the key trend here is SMSs being sent and IMs versus, if you have a look at the growth there in terms of mobile phone calls made. It's a significant shift. So we can see that it's very much, and I'm sure the operators can attest to this with their own data, the shift is very much towards using SMS as a method of communication, or IM. So with that means you're potentially losing some of your voice revenues, but obviously data revenues are going to start to increase. What I would say is that I might query the methodology in that they've only talked about mobile phone calls being made. So in a developed market, you've got your traditional fixed line. And I think, Arno, you mentioned earlier that one of the things in terms of voice calls is I think there's still a lot of growth to happen in the African context, given literacy levels. So the default for an illiterate person is going to be using voice call primarily. But the bottom line is I think there's this massive pool of water, but unlike water, it's not a finite resource. It's going to keep growing and growing and growing. So the key thing is to identify who the role players and how they work together. And okay, bit of a cliche, but I literally thought of this standing in the shower. Who doesn't like a great shower? You're standing, you're getting full blast of water. But the thing is that we all want to have our own custom experience. Okay, you want to have a specific kind of shower that does exactly what you want. Some people have got these multi-shower things going. So you need someone to focus on delivering that. But the bottom line is a shower head is useless if no one's delivering the water properly. Okay, so the key issue here is how do we get people delivering the water and people delivering the shower heads? So you need the customized, over-the-top players looking at the shower head experience, if you will, and then the network operators providing the plumbing. Not necessarily sexy, but working together, you're achieving a great result. But from my perspective, it's how do we influence this kind of learning environment, that's a very typical photo in Africa, even in South Africa, which is, in theory, it's got one of the, certainly the most invested in education system, not necessarily that the investment's going to the right places. But what is the first bit of technology that these kids are likely to see or to hold in their hands? It's going to be a mobile phone. It's going to, depending on the age, it's going to be anything from like a very basic phone through to a feature phone, unlikely to be a smartphone. So how do we look at getting information and good content to people like this? Now, obviously, I'm going to say everything should be free, data should be free. The network operators are going to say, well, how do we make it sustainable? So, I mean, I spent a little bit of time hypothesizing about a scenario. And the end point is, can free education lead to more spend on a mobile phone? Okay, so I'd just like to explore that very quickly. One of the hard things is to get data on this, so you're going to have to forgive me for the age of some of the data, and I'm relying on other academics who've done stuff, so that's the caveat. But let's look at a simple analogy that says that the more you earn, the higher your level of income. Sorry, the more educated you are, the higher your level of income. And we're relying on US data. Again, I'm very wary of relying on developed world data for the developing world, but this was the best I could find. It shows that there's a very strong positive correlation between your level of education and what you're earning. Equally, it shows that there's a strong negative correlation between your unemployment rate and your level of education. Okay. Next point is, as your income grows, we've lost the, it's on that side for some reason, but not this side. As your income grows, how much do you spend on your mobile phone? Okay. The economists will know that you talk about price elasticity. Everyone's going to point out that this is an inelastic scenario, which means that a 1% growth in income leads to less than 1% growth in mobile spend. But on an absolute level, if you look at a 1% increase in income in Nigeria results in 0.71% more being spent on mobile phones, which is actually a significant thing. Down to Mozambique, which is 0.11. The key thing here is that this survey was conducted in 2009. I think the landscape has changed significantly, and I wouldn't even be surprised if you now have a positive price elasticity in some of the countries. But the bottom line is there seems to be a correlation between increasing your income and what you spend on mobile phones. So I guess one could say is, can you, by educating people, increase their income and get them to spend more on mobile phones? I think you can. The second thing is, can you do it via mobile? So can you educate people via mobile? And the great thing is we've got hundreds of examples of that working very, very effectively. In South Africa, with Mixit, we've got hundreds of thousands of learners who are literally accessing the entire textbook via their phone. We've had issues around delivery of textbooks in South Africa, so delivery of the physical textbooks, but we can make the textbook available via their phone. We've got little apps that help them prepare for exams. These are all provided by third parties, so they're just using Mixit as the platform. But the key thing here is that your typical learner in this scenario doesn't have a parent who can help them with their homework or prepare for exams. They're in a classroom environment of one teacher up to 100 kids. So how do you get face-to-face or personal attention from that teacher? Whereas if you can enable a device to provide the technological feedback, it becomes very powerful. So something like Quizmax gives you 5 questions, then immediately gives you feedback as to how you've done. And if you've made the typical mistake, they'll try and correct it. So I think there's tremendous potential to enable economic growth through education, and I think there's no problem making it free because ultimately it's going to lead to longer-term profits for the network operators. Just a final thought. My journey into Mixit was a slightly strange one. I'm a father of 3 young children. I came back to Africa a few years ago, and my wife was heavily pregnant with our second child. And she had been reading to me from what to expect when you're expecting the whole way through the pregnancies. And yet I started talking to our nanny, looking after our 2-year-old. And although she was a mother of 2 kids and quite well educated, she knew very little about maternal health. And I thought, well, how do we address this problem? So we launched a little product called Baby SMS. We didn't have much funding, and we quickly scaled to about 1,000 users, and then we started to run out of money. I realized what we should have done is taken a bigger approach and got everyone involved, but it was my little project. Then I live in Stellenbosch. Someone said, have you tried Mixit? I hadn't even heard of Mixit, but suddenly you had this ability to send messages for free. So we launched the product on Mixit, and very soon we had literally hundreds of thousands of people receiving the messages. But what I did was I took 1,000 of those users and I plotted their GPS coordinates. And that's what you get, okay? Sorry, I didn't point out that map of South Africa, the red areas are the more heavily concentrated areas. So let me just go back a slide. So you can see there's large parts of South Africa which are very sparsely populated, and along the eastern seaboard, inland, and in Cape Town, it's quite densely populated. But if you go to the next slide, it's going to die on me now. You can get a strong sense of how we've achieved incredible geographic reach by just using devices that are already out there in circulation. So we haven't spent a cent on distributing a book or hardware or anything. It's purely just using devices that are already out there, relying on the networks to get the data out there and relying on the devices that are already in people's hands.
Great. Andrew, thank you very much. That's and I think there are a number of interesting things coming out of all of these remarks, which I want to pick up on. I do first want to bring in the audience, though, at this point, and expand on these discussions. Before I get into questions, does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay. Well, let me start off then. I think one of the key areas that we've started to discuss is around innovation, and I'm interested in your attitudes to planning for innovation and how you anticipate the need for that, specifically with regards to the customer in terms of bringing something that you think they want versus bringing something that you know they want. Nicola, I wonder if you could speak from Facebook's perspective on that to start us off.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned already was our completely shift towards mobile. I think when you think about innovation, you need to think about where you are going to be like in 5 years' time. So you were talking initially about smartphones penetration. Today we got 1 billion smartphones. I think by 2017 there will be 3.5 billion smartphones. And again, if we want to fulfill our mission to connect 5 billion people, we need to focus on mobile. So we pivoted our company towards mobile, but not just thinking about smartphones. So I think innovation is about trying to, as you said, understand what customers want. And I think it's a simple experience that responds to basic needs. And these needs are access to information, access to new opportunity, and access to our social context, people we care. So this is the first focus, and then technology comes in. I mean, technology, it's important, but will vary over time. So we need to understand mobile is going to be a big focus. So how we can change our companies to think about mobile first, to think about, and then bring users at the core of the experiences. So if I think about engagement and all our products, it's about discovery. So it goes back to the need of access of information. It's about your own identity, what you want to share, the content. It's about messaging, people you connect with. And it's about entertainment at the end of the day. So we need to take into account desire to access information, be in contact with people, and also the fact that people sometimes have got just their mobile phones as a way to be entertained.
Maria or Arnaud, do you have any thoughts on that?
So I had the privilege of, having grown up in a country like this and then work in the innovation big bubble in the world called Silicon Valley. This is truly, it's a truly unique experience. And if you're looking at what makes innovation work, why is it that Silicon Valley is so hard to duplicate anywhere else? The only thing that really makes that work is the collaborative nature of how innovators connect to other innovators in the valley, how mentors connect with innovators, how people are sharing experiences. You know, I don't know if it's a well-known fact, but if you're looking at even Mark Zuckerberg, does anyone know who was one of his Silicon Valley mentors? It was Steve Jobs. So here you have a 20-something-year-old who is working with one of the top, in a mental capacity, innovators and known innovators in the world. So coming back again to the social web, we are in incredible positions as both internet players and operators who can enable reach to create the platforms to help link innovators together. Because if you're listening to entrepreneurs, and yesterday when we had the session about the mobile entrepreneur, the biggest issue apart from funding is the support around the entrepreneur. So from that perspective, I don't believe that, yes, we need to understand what customers want, but in the social web with people caring and sharing and, you know, blogging and logging and becoming an incredibly connected society, we can't be out there unless we really targeted of what is it that we as Carrier want to innovate on. We can't the be-all and end-all to solve the issues with mobile health, to solve the issues with education, to solve the issues with financial inclusivity. We need to allow the communities out there who are experts in that field and who's got the new fresh ideas like Mixit to utilize us as platforms to collaborate and share ideas and build. Crowdfunding, I know there's lots of opinions about it, is becoming one of the main support for funding new startup projects. It's moving away from some of the old traditional VC models. Again, we can enable that in ways we've never seen before, but it's going to take bringing the right people who provide support to the innovators to be able to be successful.
And Arnaud, I wonder if I could just sort of probe a little bit on that. From your point of view, I know Orange runs at least, well, 2 techno centers in the EMEA region. Some of the notable partnerships I know that you've talked about before have been with Facebook coming out of those. Can you speak to some of the indicators or describe the customer experience and feedback that you got as a result of those partnerships?
So just for us, innovation is not only long-term view. It's tomorrow. It's also a way to drive business, to drive new usage, and it's clearly in our mindset of everybody, and it's clearly in the DNA of Orange. We need to innovate, and we need to give new service, new offers to our customers every day. To answer to your question regarding partnerships, we are still at the beginning. You said, Nicolas, that the number of Facebook users is still at the beginning in Africa. Yes, we think that it's still at the beginning. So first thing, we launch USSD Facebook, for example, in I think 18 countries at the end of the year. Results. The key first difficulty is customer experience. So we lose customer each time you have a new click to do and to register. So the easiest, the customer experience, the quickest, and the really one click will be a key differentiator. And this is where the operator has some value. We know the kind of customer, we know the device, we know how people act, and this is where the value of the operator is regarding our partners. And last, regarding innovation, we are also looking at innovation in terms of CSR subjects, which is we need in Africa not to give innovation and services only for business, but also create innovation to help develop, educate all people in Africa. And this is the kind of services that we launch, for example, Wikipedia. So we have a partnership with Wikipedia where we have a free Wikipedia service. This is education for free to all our customers, and this has a very good feedback.
Just a reminder to the audience, we do have microphones at the back if you do want to ask a question.
Whole debate on measuring of any kind of intervention. So largely we are working with the likes of Love Life, and we compare the, so our focus is relatively narrow in that sense. So in a voice-based call center and a text-based call center. They are measuring their entire impact of the Love Life program, if that makes sense. What is interesting though is that you're getting a lot of rich data coming out of a social network, be it Facebook or Mixit or Twitter, etc. And that data can be used very effectively. So as an example, one could look at everyone who's interacting with Love Life. Are they male or female? Good start. Are they black or white? And, in South Africa, that's important context. What sort of age are they? Then you could also look at how many of them are into soccer. So we've never thought about, this is a hypothetical scenario, but why can't you get Orlando Pirates to become part of a Love Life initiative to raise awareness of that? So it's a way of extracting some of the data. So I'm drifting a little bit off your question. This digital environment is providing masses of data that can come back from users. One in terms of the passive data, the things they're doing, and then there's active data like literally asking them a question and getting their opinion. And we're finding that this ability to ask people's opinion is incredibly powerful, especially amongst our user base, which are typically, their feature phone is their most powerful device. They don't have easy access to a PC. They also are relatively unserviced is probably the wrong word, but they don't enjoy the infrastructure that many of us do and the access to services. So the moment you ask them a question about something, they're very keen to provide their opinion. Unlike, I'm sure everyone in this audience, when they're asked to do a survey, you pretty much click close and forget about it, unless it's something really interesting. Whereas our surveys get incredible response rates. I'm sure something similar will be happening with Facebook across other countries. So what we see our role in terms of measuring intervention as providing a whole lot of data to the various stakeholders that we work with and trying to interpret and analyze that data.
There are some interesting examples. One of the things that mobility brings is context, especially around being able to do GIS, provide GIS-related information. There's a project in Brazil called Wikicrimes. If you go to wikicrimes.org, you can see it, and it's actually quite a good example of how you can measure some of these interventions. Now, one of the challenges that we have before we had GIS information and mobility that can tell you where things are happening, it is a bit of a shotgun approach. So basically, everyone is taking social dollars, they put it in a shotgun and hope something hits. So Wikicrimes started by a guy by the name of Professor Vasco Furtado, who's a IT criminologist specialist. And when he was looking at it, and this was around, 2010, 2009, when he started looking at the challenge of how do I use open systems, how do I make the information cheaper that can give us better insights so that we can target the interventions in more meaningful ways. So he opened up this open platform developed at the University of Furtado called Wikicrimes, and it's based on Wikimaps. He then went to the stakeholders in the area, because in Brazil it's similar to South Africa. No one trusts the judicial system, because the police are seen as corrupt, cases get logged, and no one really follows up. And he then went to the Metro Police, the insurance companies, because there again, if something gets stolen, then people go to the insurance companies to claim insurance. and the newspaper, and they started allowing people through the web and mobile web log incidences. Now, obviously, because it's a judicial process, they vetted the incidences, so they had IT criminologists to look at the data and verify the incidences. An interesting picture started forming. Literally, right through the city, there was a red line of petty crimes that started popping up, and it was like a straight line, and the map has changed quite dramatically now. They went in and they researched the root causes of why is there this red line through the city. So what happened is they discovered that a lot of it was petty theft, it was in the favela areas, and it was because of street kids running around on the street. So they started targeting, with the city funding and some private funding, street soccer programs and getting these kids in schools, with the result that in less than 12 months, there was a dramatic drop in crime. So GIS systems and the ability to log incidences is extremely important to help measure performance. However, what we also tend to do a lot of times is we like to log, but then there's no follow-through. So whatever interventions we do, there needs to be a system of follow-through.
Yeah, I know you had your hand up before.
Arno, so I'll start with Andrew. Very interesting insight to try to correlate the growth of income and the usage in terms of mobile phone and of course in revenues. As MNOs, we're challenging with the declining average revenue per user every year. So how do you see the ARPU evolving with the increase of income, especially in the emerging markets? Do you see that the ARPU is going to continue decreasing, or do you see it's going to stabilize? So that's the question for you.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I've been thinking about that quite a lot. I guess the question is how many users currently form the total amount that you. So definitely the total amount is going to continue to grow. I think in the short term the ARPU might decrease because a lot of people are now acquiring phones, but they don't necessarily have the income to do much with the phone. So it might be limited usage, and then I think over time it will increase. But I forget the term. I think it's called Engel's law. I do think you get to a point where your income gets to a certain level, but the amount you spend on your phone starts to plateau because you reach sort of a saturation point. But I believe in Africa we're a long way from that. So.
Arno, thank you for presenting to us the social innovations that you're working in. I'm curious about if you have a way to measure something that we call social return on investment, even if it's for CSR. Do you have a way to track impact, to measure impact?
Everything we do, we try to track the impact and the return on investment. So clearly, it's a basic on our activity. I would say that we have always good or bad surprise. It's quite different from one service to another and one activity to another, and also one country to another. What we see that there is a right time to have the right offer at the right in the right area. This is one of the key difficulties we have, service per service and country per country. In the CSR subject, to give you feedback on figures, we are more on 3-4 years return on investment. So we are still investing on the subject. It's clearly an investment today. We don't see revenues yet enough.
Over here.
Yeah. Telecommunication with
Who wants to
software?
take that start?
Can you just repeat the question?
You just repeat the question, maybe.
How do we combine telecommunications and software industry think about business model next 5 billion customers?
For me, it's already inside. Software and telecommunication work together. We are already completely working together. to give more service, more usage. That's why we work with developers. That's why we work with all the software industry. We work also on OS, mobile OS, which is quite key for us. But whoever it is, we need to work together already.
For me, there's a couple of challenges. Affordability, especially for the next multiple billion or 5 billion users, is still a main challenge. So in a way, the operators have been tasked to really fund this. So apply $1 billion into providing the pipes. And by the way, please provide the tap heads as well and help fund that. Now, different countries have different device subsidy things. If we really want to accelerate connectivity to enable these guys coming into the digital age, we may need to start thinking, but why are we still looking at driving feature phones? Why can we as a collective community not come up with different funding models to get better smartphones out to this community? Instead of focusing, well, you know, feature phone is like a $15 bomb cost and you're still struggling with getting Android devices for below $100. We need to get the price down and we need to look at other funding models. I mean, I keep on hearing about the billions of dollars other companies make, and that's why I'm very intrigued in Microsoft's model, which Fernando mentioned, where they themselves as an internet company are starting to look at seeding phones as well, or helping to co-fund the hardware into the hands of these guys. Data prices, you know, that can come down, but the thing is, how do we shift the areas where we used to monetize into different areas that we can still help invest in these big infrastructure projects, which is really the role of the carrier.
But there are a few ways that together, as Arnaud and Mario are saying, we can work with to start trying to bring online the next 5 billion people. I mean, traditionally, and I would like to echo what Arnaud was saying, this is already happening in a way. I think operators and social media are working together on different areas. One is access, one is growth. Another one is value-added services and other applications. There is marketing solutions, and then there is different access points. So the first pillar, I think, is about how to bring new users, and there are different strategies that we can apply. We can work with operators in helping them, providing the right product, first of all, and helping them creating the right data packages. So it's about special pricing, it's about co-marketing initiative, it's about a device strategy, like Mario was saying. The second pillar is more around, again, how social media can help operators to create new revenue stream. And this could be like operator billing, or help them promoting their own applications. Then social media have got their own marketing solution that can help operators in acquiring new customers, reduce churn, promote loyalty program. And then in more mature market, we can go on the upselling, cross-selling on different access point, helping them, again, towards TV and Wi-Fi. But I think it all goes back to 3 main points, is how social media, if we want to create sustainable models that will provide affordable data access, is how social media will help operators in increase numbers of users, increase data ARPU, and reduce their churn.
Yeah, but I know we've got a question in the back. I just want to ask Andrew for a quick word on this, because this is an interesting sort of discussion here. And Andrew, I know from Mixit's point of view, we talked before about, you know, not only having, you know, apps for smartphones, but apps for feature phones. I wonder if you could just comment briefly on the attractiveness for developers, you know, developing apps for feature phones, and how that fits into the question about, you know, moving forward with a business model.
Yeah. Just before I answer that, can I just make one comment more related to that? So when Afrikaans, there's well, I guess it's a South African expression, which is local is lekker. Okay, what that means is that something that's local to you is nice and comfortable. You're more inclined to take something that's familiar to you. So I think that one of the key things that needs to be done is we need to look at where it makes sense to scale and work on an absolutely international level. Use that to get economies of scale. but at the same time allow a little person to develop a little app that could be the next, next Mixit for all we know, next WhatsApp, next, how do you enable someone to develop something in rural Nigeria that could take over the world? So it's kind of keeping both focuses. Coming back to your question on developing on multiple operating systems, I mean, so just to give you a sense of Mixit currently, about 83% of our users are on feature phones, another 14% on BlackBerry. But I always point out that the vast majority of those, in fact, it's about nearly 95% of that 14%, if that makes sense, are on the BlackBerry Curve, the 8520, which was the entry-level BlackBerry phone that came in. And no offense to anyone from BlackBerry here, but that's not much better than a normal feature phone. It doesn't have a touch screen. If you try to run, I mean, I had one for 2 years. If you try to run like an Excel spreadsheet, you just got the blue screen. You couldn't even access many of the BlackBerry apps. So it's very different from one of the high-end BlackBerries. So what I'm getting at is if you take that 83% and another 95, about 95% of our base are on feature phones. But they're shifting. They're shifting to smartphones, generally to Android. So about 3% of the whatever's left on Android. And then we do have people on Windows, on iPhone, etc. So what we've focused on heavily is how do we enable a third-party provider of content, someone who's got good content, doesn't necessarily have much technological know-how, how do we get them to deliver on multiple platforms? So essentially Mixit's focused on having an API that enables someone to plug into that and then render their service on multiple devices.
Sorry, I know you've been waiting.
I just want to pick up on the conversation I think Nicola and Andrew have been pursuing, which is, I think, as an internet players, you've become platforms. You've become platforms for other people to develop in the same way that the network operators are becoming platforms to deliver the data. And it seems to me that actually there's another community that's sort of not represented on the platform, which is one of the entrepreneur, the guy who will work on your platforms, work on your infrastructure. And I wonder if you could just comment a bit, make a bit more of a play on that, please.
For us, it's a key focus. We don't want to do the services internally. We really want to open our platforms, whatever, SMS, USSD, billing, Orange Money, all the APIs, the key APIs of the operators, to be open to any entrepreneur. So this is our focus on today.
And I think if you look at the trends where the next generation telecom network is going, it is exactly that. With cloud-based infrastructures and virtualization, it is becoming cheaper and more essential to be able to provide access to all the, call it network features for a lack of a better word, to enable that and open it up so that others can build on top of that. So in a way, I don't mind being called a dumb pipe as long as I'm a sustainable, wealthy dumb pipe.
Sure, a smart pipe.
Giving a nice shower.
A smart pipe.
I can just comment
Yeah,
on
yeah.
You're right. I think social media got a big responsibility. We need to help entrepreneurs, developers to address their three main challenges. One is provide them with the social element. I mean, a game is more engaging if you can play with your friends. Distribution, I think, is the most important thing. Provide visibility to an application. So, as you were saying, everyone can develop an application, can be seen and be distributed. And then the third part is, of course, monetization. Developers that make money are happy developers and will create even better products. So we are all about making our platform very open. It's clear our monetization strategy with developers is very, very, very open, very in favor of developers. But again, I think we got a big responsibility because it's ultimately also what is going to drive more engagement on our platforms.
So I think we've got time for do you want to?
Yeah. In terms of, because you didn't necessarily get into the nitty-gritty of how a developer would make money. Essentially, Facebook makes it the same kind of model where there's an advertising stream where there can be a share of revenues on advertising. Then there's digital currency opportunity. And where you where you get into the digital currency, you need strong partnerships with the network operators, because the easiest way to get money into your ecosystem, like Facebook or Mixit, is to get airtime converted into a digital currency. It's far more efficient, especially in Africa, to use airtime than it is to use hard currency, just because they've got probably 90% of the network figured out in terms of getting money into the system. So that's where, again, in order to have a good developer community, we need strong partnership between the various role players.
It's always nice to shift the risk of potential money laundering schemes onto the operators, right? I'd also just want to add into that, and this is coming to customer ownership. It was quite interesting. I participated in a workshop yesterday afternoon, and it was quite interesting to see the diverse views. And one of the questions that was posed, okay, well, we get a nice social entrepreneur who comes to the carrier to partner with around some specific applications that they want to do for a community they want to participate in. And it was quite fascinating to see the conflict with a lot of my peers, and my apologies to my peers, in the operator side of customer ownership. That the thinking was, okay, we will help this guy, but only if we now take control of his application or service. And in the social web, we need to get away from it trying to protect our customer base. It's not our customer base exclusively anymore. In the social web, the customer is owned by multiple different services. I mean, Facebook, they call them users. They don't call them customers. So we can't create value in the way that innovator and new application provider understand his target base. So instead of trying to protect and with the fear that we might be losing, we really need to start thinking of opening up and allowing them to innovate on top of that, because it's beneficial to both the company that works in that space and ourselves. We will both reap the benefits from that.
So this is great discussion. I think we're probably going to have more questions than we have time to go through here. Chris, did you want to bring in a question at this point? Okay, great. I think we've got time for one more question. I know this gentleman at the back has patiently been waiting. Go ahead.
It's more of an observation than a specific question, with maybe some comment from the panel. But I think for me, one of the things which is perhaps missing in the discussion, when we look at ARPU as one of the key metrics and trying to map that over mobile for development, what seems to be missing here is what that money is being spent on, what types of services people are accessing with their ARPU. And I think one of maybe the next disruptions will be to see people moving away from a voice call, spending X amount dollars on voice calls just to friends versus voice calls to Mixit or to call centers, or in fulfilling some sort of business function. So I think that's kind of like a metric which I would like to see being more brought into what operators look at when it comes to mobile for development. Looking at the ARPU, but what services, what social services, what developmental services are being accessed through that spend, rather than just entertainment and some of the other things that we've seen be successful before.
Maybe just a very quick response from anybody who wants to.
Well, voice calls is still our bigger ARPU. So we still have time to look at both voice calls and new services. But to be honest, I think in the coming months or years, we still have strong ARPU thanks to voice calls.
I mean, I fully agree. If you still look at where most of the ARPUs are coming from, it's from voice. And as Andrew said, if you still work in markets with large illiteracy rates, voice is one of the main things. Voice, however, as we become all data, is again moving into the IP world. So it's a great opportunity and time to start thinking about other monetization streams. And there, I truly believe we have to learn from our social web industry partners and peers on how to monetize in these new ways. Because otherwise, if we don't do that, coming back to innovation, you're not going to be able to enable the channels of revenues and streams of revenues that those entrepreneurs are going to need in order for them to be sustainable with their businesses.
Great. I think that entire discussion has been very useful, and I think based on the questions that we got from the audience here and the discussion amongst ourselves, we've identified some consensus in the value of partnerships in capturing what is a very sizable opportunity. Chris, I know you're going to come up and give an announcement just before lunch, but thank you everybody for attending this session and asking these questions. It only leaves me to thank our panelists for joining and providing that great insight. Thank you very much.